All right, hey everybody, TG here. Let's see, it's September 25th. Hope you guys are doing well. We got live on YouTube, Facebook, and X, and then we also have the Moxie Trading Room live as well. So good to see you guys up in here too. All right, this morning I was on live with the Moxie traders, and for as much as I do think that this market is, I don't know, feels like to me we're setting up for a bit of a bull trap. So I think we're going to get I'm looking still for a market dip. We really just haven't had anything, no trends as of yet. But something, it just kind of feels like something's ginning up here. We're having a hard time really getting higher. Of course, if I'm wrong about this, then this could just be some consolidation, and then the market could pop higher. But I'm just kind of looking at this, and I think that the market is still kind of getting juiced from a little bit of the 50 basis point rate cut. So basically, right here is where the market settled in from that. And then you can see we've basically just been trying to grind up a little bit further after that. But we are ignore the Moxie and the Moxie price triggers right here. But if you can just see where price is in relation to the 8 EMA, it's still looking to me like it's kind of floating up there in the middle of nowhere. So I think that is a challenge to keep going higher. That is a bit of a risk from what I look at. And then also we could be having the tech. Tech is doing well today, probably because of NVIDIA with the news that Jensen has stopped cashing in his stock. So that negative pressure has been relieved, and you can see that NVIDIA is up. So most likely that being up is going to at least keep the market afloat for today. Now we'll have to see what that actually does for tomorrow. There's some basically the news is that there's going to be some big economic data tomorrow, plus Jerome Powell speaking, plus I think one of our subscribers said that there are about 10 other Fed heads speaking tomorrow. So we'll have to see if they are all on the same narrative and what that narrative might be. But I do feel like we're getting a little bit risky up and through here. And of course, we all know that the seasonality for September is pretty weak, and also that the last week of September is the weakest. So we'll have to see if it's a combination between a self-fulfilling prophecy or if it's baked into the cake already. And we're not going to know until it actually starts to happen. And I kind of think that it feels like everything's going to be fine until finally they change something and drop it. So what I've been trying to do is look for clues of that. The clues have been murky, but it's kind of this experiential thing of being in the markets for quite some time and just looking at this, being like, I've seen this before, and kind of when it gets quiet, something tends to happen. So I'm trying to do my best of just being prepared for that, like staying long. I don't think that this is going to be anything too radical because I mean, as Henry likes to say, there's nothing bearish about new all-time highs. Okay, so I do think that is the backdrop that we need to have with this market. But I also, at the other side of it, going to be like, I'm just not sure that we should keep initiating a whole lot of fresh longs up here. Maybe if we get something down here, that might be a little bit more comfortable. You still do want to be in cycle with the market, and I think that's something we're looking at. One little clue for me that I like to look at is if I can type it right, look at the difference UVIX. So we all know that the market has been making higher highs, higher lows mostly, and notice that the UVIX has been making higher lows also. Here's something to kind of scratch your head with. Like, why are they both going up? They should not be. If the market is going up, the UVX should be going down. So why is this holding? Now, the idea could be that because Jerome Powell is speaking, or because we have some economic data coming out, or there's something that the market generally is preparing for as a market moving event, and that could be tomorrow. Or it could just be that the market is also seeing that things are getting a little bit frothy to the upside, and that maybe there's something happening. Yeah, and then B1, the other thing that we all know, and this is because interest rates are being cut, that the 10 and 2s are inverting. The yield curve is uninverting. And that is because with short-term interest rates coming down. And that's how that's happening. Yes, generally speaking, when the yield curve uninverts, that is also what starts to spark the recession and starts to spark a market decline and all that. Also, the Fed cutting rates, why did they cut it 50 basis points as opposed to 25? Do they know something? Are they trying to get ahead of something? Like all these things that people could be talking about and speculating about and whatever. Um, you know, there could be something, but also we do have to think that the narrative for now is that the economy is doing okay, or at least to how they're able to cook the numbers and kind of keep things afloat and do whatever they need to do. Things are doing all right, and we are in a rate cutting cycle. And so I do think we're going to be kind of in that honeymoon phase that until things really do get bad, until things really start to show and start to crack underneath our feet, I do think that a rate cutting cycle is going to be generally bullish for the market. And basically, things that I see still continue to look good. We can even look at the RSP, which is the equal weight for the S&P. It's hard to be bearish up there, really. It is hard to be bearish. And if we look at the MDY, let's try that one more time. MDY, this is the mid caps. Hard to be bearish, hard to be bearish on something like that. Even the IWM, small caps. I look at this and I kind of say, they languished for a very long time. But what they did is they basically built a base and then they started to move up. I think this was kind of in anticipation of rate cuts because they're like, I think it was right here that, everyone was like, oh my God, they're going to do like 6 rate cuts in 2024. And then when basically the news was like, nah, they're not going to be doing 6 rate cuts in 2024. In fact, they're not going to do rate cuts in the beginning of 2024. It's going to be closer to the end. Instead of the IWM and the small caps like totally reverting it and going back down, they really just held. And I remember talking about this months ago when all this was happening. I was like, this isn't that bad, actually. And if you look on the monthly, it's really just flagged into the monthly 10. And so the small caps just went into a holding pattern. I said, oh, okay, well, we didn't get our cake. We didn't get our cake yet, but we know the cake is coming. And now we have up here. And I look at this and say, basically, I think we're in another Darvis box. And I think it's positive, and I don't. There's nothing. Just nothing bearish here. So this is why I kind of think that even though the yield curve is uninverting, and yes, that could be the thing that says, yep, of course we're going to have a recession at some point. Yeah, the market's going to come down. We still could get, I don't know, could we get 4 months, 6 months? Could we get 12 months of great extreme bullishness until that happens? Yeah, sure, why not? How long can they push this off? We'll have to see. But for right now, everything's still looking pretty good. We even look at FNGU or FNGS, which is this is the leveraged ETF for the FANG stocks. They certainly had a wild ride, going right there. That was the yen carry trade unwinding. So we had some pretty big news events out there that really threw the market off for a while. But look what it did. It recovered and it's right smack in the middle. And still, I would say that looks pretty bullish. And I think I would propose that part of the reason that it's still bullish is because this was a huge liquidation break. Like, how many people got their stops hit in such short order? And we had a massive pullback, and it really kind of shook things up and, got shook the weak hands out, and things are looking pretty decent. And here we are sitting right back up there. And once again, we have the 8 over the 21, we have price over the 30, we have price over the 50. Like, everything looks good. And this was a nice pullback into the monthly 10. I just don't see any problems on the bigger picture. The problem was that this was up here at the third ATR, and that was at the third ATR, and that was at the third ATR. But you'll look ever since then, pull back, pull back, pull back. And so now we're just kind of waiting for price to keep going higher. That's why, like, in the near term, I do think we need a little bit more consolidation or pullback or something like that. But big picture is all looking pretty good. So let's see, even, gosh, you look at housing. How about Nail? Nail's been doing pretty well. Yeah, some wild rides, but it's still doing well and still moving up. Even the semis, let's look at SOXX. Kind of looks like FNGU, right? Got a little overbought all the way back in here and back in here. And what it do? Double bottom right into the weekly 50. And now we're just waiting for this thing to kind of consolidate, get itself figured out, and most likely keep going higher. So unless this really breaks down and starts to go this way, I'm going to be biased to the high side for it. I suppose if it did break down, maybe we could say it's a head and shoulders, but we'll have to see if that actually happens. Otherwise, keep going up. And if we look at the daily and hourly, we're right in that process. This is why I'm saying we have to navigate this, because we are having to deal with a downtrending daily 50. So the first time that we ran into that, yeah, got rejected. And I would argue part of the reason for that is because price was here and the Moxie indicator was so far below zero. That's your inverse trampoline move, or at least a rejection. But then now that we have this double bottom and we got a little bit of positive divergence, we got to see if this actually follows through. Because right now, if you look at the semis, they're holding the hourly 50, whereas before they failed the hourly 50. So we are seeing a little change of character from these things. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm super comfortable going long right here, because I do think that we're probably going to, either more consolidation or a couple dips or something like that. I would like to see a bit of a refresh in through here before just, still chasing this to the long side. This kind of goes along with what I was showing the Moxie traders about China. Look here, with the semis, you see that first rejection, and then you got that double bottom, and that carried through. Well, take a look at FXI, the Chinese ETF. And now I know that they have the news of the stimulus and stuff like that, but let me show you this. You see that first rejection? And you see how the Moxie indicator was below zero? Looks just like the semiconductors, doesn't it? And then what do we get after that? Basically, here's your pullback. There's your double bottom right in through there. And there's your positive divergence. And it was able to take off. So that's why I'm still looking at this and saying, hey, I'm still generally bullish on this market, and just kind of looking for better opportunities closer in. Yeah. So there are names that are not working out there, but I think for the most part, things are doing quite well, and things related to interest rates are also doing quite well. I mean, look at that Cube Smart self-storage. I've been talking about this one all the way back and through here. So yeah, that one's doing well. And then Comp has been another one. This was really kind of choppy to begin with. This was we definitely tried taking a couple trades in through there. And I was like, I can see this thing's work. It's gonna work one of these days. And it took a couple earnings and whatnot, but right there, as price finally pulled back into and held the daily 50, and then you get your move to the upside. So that worked out quite nicely on that one. And if we look at the higher time frame, same kind of deal. I mean, look at these consolidations right through there, and you can see even here holding the monthly time frames. So yeah, a lot of these things out there doing well. Buddy, but hopefully everyone can hear me in the Moxie room. If she lost her audio, maybe she just needs to reset, but hopefully everybody else can still hear me in the room. So that's what I'm kind of seeing from the longer term stuff. And okay, good, thanks. Yeah, audio is good. That's what I was hoping for. And so if we kind of keep looking around, I know Roblox is another one that I've kind of been looking at, and I'm wondering if we're eventually going to break out or keep moving higher. It has been a very long road, and this is kind of what I'm thinking when I say very similar to the IWM, how the IWM has been down here in a holding pattern for very, very long, and then finally starting to break out. I am interested to see if some names like Roblox, a couple others that come to mind, like Comp, for example, if we are starting to see that these could actually start moving up. So, as I say, a rising tide lifts all boats. For the last 2 years, that hasn't exactly been all true, because, of course, the S&P and the Nasdaq have been doing great, but the small caps have just been left alone, and I think that is because they have been waiting for interest rates to start coming down. And so that's what I'm seeing is, with the interest rates starting to come down, we are getting a resurgence in small cap names. Case in point, I'll just point out ZM. Some people have been discussing these. I don't know if ZM or Peloton or some of these once amazing stocks are going to really come back, they might appreciate. I'm not going to say they won't, but there is a difference. You can see here. Notice that that looks very different than what we've seen before. If this can sustain and keep following through, then something like this will can keep going higher, probably in this environment where rates are getting cut. But I just don't know if Zoom or Peloton are going to really have what they once had back in the day, because they were such pandemic specialties and meme stocks and all that kind of stuff. There's possibilities, and if this is something that interests you, then be my guest. They do look like they are trying to change direction, and maybe a rate cutting cycle can help lift all these things. Lending Club kind of reminds me of this one. For as messy and choppy as they were, something like this is actually starting to hold a little bit better. I mean, look at the monthly chart. There was a lot, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 months that this thing was just going sideways. Now, for us as retail traders, that might be a little bit challenging to hang on through something like this. But if you're an institution or a hedge fund or something like that, you probably look at that and you're just rubbing your hands because, like, yeah, that's looking good. Because this means you can get in here and keep building a position without it getting away from you. And then look what it did. It continued to hold, and now it looks like it's starting to move in an uptrend. And on the weekly chart, it's been holding here quite well, and now we're up here. So that's where I'm seeing that a lot of these things kind of just went into a holding pattern. They built their longer term bases, and now they're starting to motivate. And I would assume that has something to do with the rate cutting cycle finally starting to work out. So whatever you want to say about the economy, it just doesn't matter yet. I know that during the pandemic and some other things, I was watching new traders come to the market, and they're like, "We should be melting down. This economy can't be doing this. Like, everything's dying. All these kind of problems." And the market was screaming like, "Ah, this just shouldn't be happening." It's like, why are you fighting it? Like, whatever you want to think. Would you rather make money or do you want to be right? And so I know a lot of people were having some issues with that, and it's like, just go with it. It may not make sense. The market doesn't have to make sense. All we have to do is just go with it and don't fight it, and that's what we're seeing in through stuff like this. Let's see, Ion Q. I don't know. That's a little harder. That doesn't look super interesting yet. It hasn't really changed. Perhaps I'm willing to say that maybe this is where it stopped going down. But if you look at the difference, just look at the difference between, well, heck, even back here. What's the difference? There is no confirmation yet to here and here. You still have the 8 below the 21. You're still underneath all the moving averages. The Moxie indicator is still below 0. I mean, look here, at least you have the Moxie price trigger getting over 0. Yeah, there's nothing here yet. It's a huge maybe. Maybe it'll work out. But I rather see more indication like that Lending Club, LC. And just nothing here. Gosh, I think we can even look at, if we want to talk about some Chinese stocks. I mean, look at Huya. Here's one that kind of came to mind. You want to see where a good opportunity to at least try getting on something like this? Well, when they can finally get past their 50, first off, and when they start flagging into these higher time frame moving averages that are actually going up. It's really hard to say that there's any possibility when they're below. There just isn't. But at least here, there's potential. Let me look at my list and see if I can kind of think about some of the other ones. Let's see, OPRA. Now, here's a possibility. Now, I've looked at this one for quite some time. I think we took a small trade on this one back in the day, like right around there, something to that extent. And you can see it just wasn't quite ready. But this looks like it's trying to set up again. That's at least promising. I like these ideas. And you can see here on the monthly chart, it at least looks like it has potential. And those are the ones that I'm going to go after, with this kind of new market change that we're seeing with more participation. Let's see, Huma. Here's another interesting one. Now, this one is a little bit. Do you guys know the Nancy Pelosi tracker? Have you guys heard that Twitter, the X page? They're all about that politicians shouldn't be trading. Basically, they have insider trading, but they don't get in trouble because they're the politicians. And so what they do is they actually dig up any trade. They're supposed to publicize or note the trades that they take, and when they do, and some politicians are better than others, and they figure, okay, well, if they're going to disclose them, then we should follow them because they're still taking these trades, but they're not getting in trouble. So if they know something, well, let's benefit from it. And Huma is one of those. Apparently, somebody who's on some committee or board bought a lot of it, and so they're like, "Well, if he knows something, then with the rest of us should go in," and that's where this thing started to go up and appreciate. I think it got a little ahead of its britches. It's part of the Wall Street bets, I think, now too. So it got a little overbought here. But if you look generally speaking, it's right back into the weekly 50 and right back into the monthly 10. So it could be a possibility in through here. And you can see, where did it start? When it got over these moving averages and actually pulled into these moving averages. And that's why I'd be looking at names like this, because you can see here these are doing well. That even reminds me of ARM. Yeah, buddy, I agree. That's the difference when you make the law versus the rest of us. Yep, that's why they're talking about it. ARM is also very interesting. I'm really looking closely at it in through here. I just can't help but think that there's going to be some sort of pullback over the next, I don't know, few days. And if there is, I'd rather just get in at, I don't know, even if I can get at 140 or 135 as opposed to 146, I think that would be good. But yeah, I like that. That's looking, it's got really some interest to me as well. Let me see if I can kind of think about how Dash, DoorDash, is that something? Yeah, there you go. So now B1, when you're looking at IonQ, and I said, no, I don't see anything yet, you could possibly be right here, okay? Because, the one for IonQ, it still had the 8 below the 21 and price it underneath there and the Moxie indicators below 0. That's why I'm saying it could work. But right here is what I would like to see. I'd like to see price actually get over and across these moving averages before I really consider. And there's the Moxie price trigger. And then the next best bet is basically right here when price does start to pull into these higher time frame moving averages. All right, now I'm seeing some action, and I don't want to miss out on anything due to me being on the mic on the social media stuff. So let me take a look here, and I want to see what's kind of happening. Because remember, we just had an hour-long Moxie session and saying, I really do think that the market at some point is going to go down. I mean, today we've got negative internals, and so that all has been a thing. And you can see here, we have been underneath the 2-minute 50. If you guys remember when I was on with you this morning, I said that's what we're looking for, just like I pointed out right there. See the same thing? Now, the question is, where do we get going? Now, the reason why I flip back over here is because if we look at the UVIX, this is starting to move a bit. And that's why I'm like, I'm keeping a close eye on the UVIX because I do think something is going to be starting to, shake and bake with that. And so then we come over here, and you can also see this starting to kind of manifest a little bit more. These 5710 puts are starting to kind of wiggle. And so I just got to think, is there going to be any kind of follow through today? And that, unfortunately, is the $1,000,000 question for me is, do we do anything here? Or are we just going to be stepping into chop? And it is a really challenging day to figure that out. And unfortunately, if we take a trade, we might just have to be prepared that it may not really move anywhere. So. All right. Well, with that being said, I've been with you guys for a while on Facebook and YouTube and X. So I'm kind of be watching this again with this something. It's like I don't know if today if they're going to really move it or if we're going to come into some support that might be not totally visible and then they bounce it. And so if we do take a trade on this, or if you take a trade on this, just understand you might be getting a little bit chopped up today. There could be a move. That today is going to be one of those tough days, I think, where it's going to be sneaky as if if there really is going to be something, because all these things are kind of flashing, but it may not really happen much. All right. And then just before I go, B1, so you're looking at IonQ on the daily chart. Yeah, there could be the start. I see you're looking at, here's your level, and you are trying to get over the daily 50. I would still say that I think that there could be a little bit more work. If you're saying, I could think that maybe there's something here, but with the 50 still below the 200, I'd like to see a little bit more development. So I think that there's potential, But I also think that if it does start to move, you got a lot of baggage overhead with those monthly and weekly timeframes, and I think that there are other things that would I think that are more ripe, if that's the best way to put it. All right, guys. All right, I'm going to be hopping off, and I'm going to be in the chat room for the Moxie traders to see what we do about this SPX 0DT thing, because I don't know if we're gonna. I just can't quite tell if there's going to be a